Hey everyone, Ernie Tech here, and as you know, occasionally I will delve into the movies to find examples of how mainframe computers are generally abused in them. And this is this is one of the examples of how using a mainframe system or a data center as a prop can go kind of pear-shaped. Anyway, this is a movie from 1968. Contains quite a few actors who were of note, and I can't imagine why they participated in this movie, except maybe, I don't know, their careers were heading down the tubes. It almost seems as though. But anyway, let's talk about this thing. That Came to Rob Las Vegas was actually a Eurocaper movie, and it was filmed, quite a bit of it, in Spain. In fact, all of the desert scenes in this, which I'll show you in a second, were not filmed in Nevada near Las Vegas. In fact, most of the Vegas shots were just filler shots or quick shots, and then everything was produced over in Madrid and Barcelona and areas of the European desert over there. Anyway, let's have a look at this thing, and you'll get a kick out of who is in it and what it's about. All right, here are the main players. And here's the plot. The plot is a casino blackjack dealer and his girlfriend and a group of criminals, because there's always a group of criminals, hijack and rob an armored car carrying $7 million. Well, $7 million in 1968 was a lot of bucks. Now it's probably just about enough to buy a two-bedroom fixer-upper somewhere in my neck of the woods. So they are between Vegas and Los Angeles. They're supposed to be in the desert, and this is where it all takes place. But it was produced in Spain by Antonio Isasi Ismendani. Hope I get that right. And he was, I guess he was very fortunate to have Warner Brothers actually pick this up. He only made 4 movies. And I won't say that any of them were exactly memorable, but maybe they were. It depends upon how you view the movies. Anyway, Elke Sommer was in this, and she was one of the it girls, definitely, back in 1968. Lee J. Cobb, Gary Lockwood, and Jack Palance. Now, Gary Lockwood is very interesting because he has been all over the map in 1968. He was, I guess you might say, the surfer boy turned actor. And he has a lot of roles that are supporting roles, but this one here is really odd. Jack Palance, more known for Westerns than anything. One thing about this movie, which I got a kick out of it, I don't think there was a single scene in this movie where someone wasn't smoking a cigarette. It was pretty absurd. But this is the cast, and I say that the movie should remain in obscurity. When I say the movie was no good or bad, that's subjective, obviously. You might like it. You might love it. Some people do, especially old film aficionados. I found it to be almost impossible to watch. But anyway, this is the guy that produced it. He only had 4 movies, and this was one of them in 1968. The last time he made a movie was in 1972, and he passed away in 2017 in Spain. And again, I'm not sure how in the world he got the financing from Warner Brothers to produce this, but he did, and he was able to attract quite a number, at least 4 or 5 American actors and then supporting actors from Europe. And, anyhow. First thought, how the heck did Frank Poole become an armored car robber? Oh, look at this. I like this. I spelled Las Vegas wrong. This is appropriate for this movie. Just let me tell you. Yeah, he went from a PhD astrophysicist living on a space station outside of Jupiter to, a guy back in the 60s with bad sideburns. And what's worse, for a while he was a captain of a starship until, he became a deity and then ruined everything. But again, nice gray hair, bad sideburns. So, how did he become the it guy in these movies? I can only assume it's because after you do 2001: A Space Odyssey in 1968, it's kind of tough. I would think it's kind of tough to get some leading roles. You're always going to be remembered, I think, for that role. Well, anyhow, poor Gary Lockwood. He, anyhow, that's who he went to. And I must have not had enough coffee, because I'm going to fess up to typing some awful typos here. 2 L's, N-A. Bear with me. All right. Las Vegas, 1968. It's dark. You notice it's dark. Now, I'm of an age where if I was in Vegas in 68, I was a kid. And I never went there until many, many years later. I'd gone there several times in the 90s and the 2000s. I'm not a big fan of Las Vegas. I think it's a fun place to look around. But in my mind, it's, I don't know. Your mileage may vary. I'm not a huge fan of the hustle and the bustle, but it is beautiful to look at, and especially in those days because it was 99% neon. There were no LEDs back in those days. There was very little anything other than neon, fluorescent, and incandescent. And one of the things about that is it creates this glow. It creates this ambiance. There's a certain darkness to it that actually adds a whole lot to the feel. You go there now, and it might as well be daytime. And especially with LED lighting that has absolutely no bloom. There's no charm to it. There's no feel to it. Again, it's me. Your mileage may vary. You might like it. I think this is amazing looking. And I know this has nothing to do with computers. This is just me musing, but let's bear with it. Look at the lights on the cars. They couldn't light up the car in front of them, let alone out in the desert somewhere. Ah, heavens. I have driven, not myself, but as a passenger, from LA to Las Vegas and back. And let me tell you, there's nothing out there. I mean, there is nothing out there. On the horizon, you just see, it's just kind of a, anyway, it's kind of a fuzzy horizon. Okay, there's Las Vegas back in the day. But Las Vegas is designed to empty your wallet and bank account. So let's talk about the movie and some of the choices that it made. It made each one of these casinos. Now, this is not the main casino route. This is the supporting coming in, so you have hotels and so on. But all of the casinos back in the days had their own data centers of a kind to count the money and do all the business aspects of it. It was very much like the horse racing industry. That's something else I'm going to do a thing about. I had family members who were employees of horse racing in the business offices, and they had mainframe computers. They had IBM 360s, if I recall, back in those eras. And I recall as a kid sitting down in front of the key punch machines with a stack of cards, just typing crap in, wasting cards to keep me busy when I was visiting or something. Like take your dumb kid to work day. All right. Now, have a look at this here. This is, I guess, it's not the Strip. Maybe it is. But anyhow, this is Vegas back in the 60s. And this car here is supposed to be the armored car that is entering into Vegas to either drop the money off or take it or whatever. There's supposed to be $7 million in this thing. And this car looks to me like it was not made by George Barris. I think he would be embarrassed to make something this stupid looking. But this is supposed to be the target of all their attempts and affections. They call it a Euro caper movie because if you watch the movie, you're going to see that the timing and the feel of it really has sort of a, I don't know, it's a really bad attempt at a Euro caper kind of Bond. It's a mess. Anyway, Skorsky Armored Cars is the target. Keep that in mind. Now, this is very interesting because most of the interior shots of this movie were done in Spain, including the desert scenes. They weren't filmed in Nevada. They were filmed in the deserts of Spain. And there are deserts in Spain. I've got the name of it. I probably should have it. But anyway, there are deserts in Spain. And in the 60s, Madrid was an up-and-coming business center. And IBM was very eager to expand its business role into Europe. And Madrid, as I understand and as I have read, was one of the locations where IBM was establishing a presence in insurance companies and financial institutions. And what they decided to do in this movie, and they give no attribution to the buildings. They give no attribution to the companies. Maybe the companies were afraid to be identified in case this thing was a real dog, which it was. But these are buildings in Spain, not buildings in Los Angeles. Now, at first, I thought this might have been the gas company in L.A. on Olive Street, because I had been there many times on business back when I was, a productive guy. I had gone to California on many occasions. In fact, I lived in California in the early '80s because there was some commonality between different. Well, anyway, get into that whole thing. I was at the gas company many times in California, usually staring out the window. But yeah, so this is all done in Madrid. All right, let's have a look at this thing. Let's get to the reason why that we are here, and that is that the backdrop is this IBM 360 Model 40 that they are using in the movie. And now here's how it rolls. And I'm not going to give it away, because if you're going to watch the movie, you don't need me spoiling the ending. But it's a pretty predictable ending, so I won't do it, but wouldn't be hard to do. All right, the guy on the left there is Mr. Skorsky, and he owns an armored car company, and he's the guy that all the casinos use to transport the money from here to there. It's always from L.A. to Vegas, and it's always across this desert. And you would think that crossing that desert would be, that's where all the risk is going to occur. Well, that's in case that is exactly the case. Jack Palance over here was an insurance investigator, and he had been investigating rumors of this heist that was supposed to occur. And he knew that this heist was going to occur, and he wasn't going to let his insurance company, however it worked out, take the fall for this kind of money. And he wanted to know exactly how this machine worked. What was this machine doing? What was the scheduling? Now, here's the funny thing about this machine. This machine was not used for payroll. It wasn't used in the movie for anything that would be remotely financial. And that's where it got me. I kind of was amused by this. In the Vegas environment, the casinos and the exchange of the money and the gambling and all the kind of things and the odds and all those things, because Vegas is designed to suck your wallet dry, the computer systems were primarily used for the management of money transactions. But in this movie here, it had nothing to do with it. This guy, Skorsky, was using it for crew scheduling and routing. So I don't get the impression that the producers on the movie really understood what computers did back in those days. But anyway, it was a Model 40, according to what I could glean from the interwebs, which is not very much. Now, this is an actual data center somewhere in Spain. These are all Spanish citizens. These are actors. This is interesting because each one of them is wearing a security company uniform, walking around looking very busy and very intent, and a whole series of people sitting in front of key punch machines, typing away, wasting the heck out of cards. For what purpose? Well, in the movie, Skorsky, the owner of the company, has an encryption system that he says only he understands. And so it's impossible for anyone to crack this and find the schedule for their routing. Well, I don't think it'd be a lot of trouble to sit out in the desert somewhere and wait for the van to go by. But anyhow, they wasted all these resources for a very kind of an oddball purpose. But this was an actual data center somewhere in Madrid, and there's no way, and I have dug, there's no way to find out where this is. But it's very 60s looking. It's very mod for the day. It was a pretty movie. There's no doubt about it. But there was a lot of production flaws where it didn't seem like the details were as important as you would think they should be. Anyway, if you look at all the clerks there, they're working on a Model 29. They're sitting there typing away. They're sticking cards in the inbox, typing in a line of code, 80 columns, shooting it out there, popping it into this wonderfully designed little carrier here, this little transport device. And when I was a kid, I mentioned this, that I would be sitting in front of this thing while my uncle was a data center manager in the horse racing industry. And to keep me busy when I would be visiting, because I would visit with my aunt and, a little kid. He would put me in front of this thing and crack open a box of cards, stick them in there, and turn it on, and I would sit there just transfixed for, half an hour, 45 minutes, just cranking cards through this thing. Dumb as can be, a waste of it, but hey, nobody seemed to care. But anyway, that's a Model 29. That's iconic. That's I would love to have one of these things. What I found interesting is the mechanics of this thing. These things are just beautiful. This was the epitome of engineering in those days. maybe in any day, where you have the perfect transport for the cards. And as I recall, the problem was Hanging Chad. 2000. Remember 2000, Hanging Chad, the elections in the United States? Well, anyway. When the punch went through here to create the openings in the Hollow Earth card, I guess they were Hollow Earth cards. We used Hollow Earth cards for microfilm identification. It's a different topic. These little buggers here had to be dealt with. They had to go somewhere. And if you didn't keep this machine clean, these things could wind up all over the place. And that was 90% of the jam sources. The other thing was, of course, it's paper. And in a paper environment, it's dirty. People don't really understand that a paper environment is not a clean environment because all the little stuff that comes off of paper, all the little tons of little threads, they build up and they collect dust and they collect grease and grime, and these things can get really messy if not maintained. And one of the things I noticed about this movie is that most of these things tended to look brand new. When that tells me that this is the early... If it was in Madrid, and there's no data that I can find exactly where this is, this was in the heyday when things were starting to be built. The building was new. Everything was new. This was a new environment. There was nothing old about this. And right there you had the transport. And this little thing would take the card, grab it, and flip it up, and there was this nice little weight on the top, and that would stack up there for that whole program. They'd go over and grab it, walk it through the door to the data center, and they would run the job. This is my understanding. So pretty cool. This is an iconic machine, and an awful lot of people. Your grandmother and your aunt sat there in front of this thing for many, many years. All right, let's see if we can identify. So I spent quite a bit of time trying to identify each of the pieces of this. I don't know that I'm even 75% correct. I think I am, but let's just find out, at least in this area here. So the view of the building is over on the right, or the room. This is that view coming through from... the previous one. So they're inside this room now. Let me back down again. So that's where they're looking from over here above Ernie's head. Lee J. Cobb is walking through the door. I don't know what he did wrong to get in this movie, but it must have paid him a lot of money. And there's a data center and a raised floor, I would think, because I see no indication there's cables all over the place here. So what do we have along here? Well, we've got, it looks like a 2501 card reader, a 3505 reader punch machine, control boxes of some kind. I don't know what this is. I think it's a communications controller, but I'm not sure. There's the processor. There is a 1050 terminal and the nice little chairs and so on. So yeah, it's the real place. It's not a prop. And I guess they paid a good amount of money to have access to this. Probably, I don't know, Sundays. Data centers do not sleep. That's the fun thing. It's possible. It's very possible that this area, this building, this system was not actually operational yet, and that the production company had a short window to make this movie before it became operational. Because you really don't have a lot of time to work in an environment like this where it's not functioning. It's too expensive. All right. There's the tape units in the background, 2401s. They went all over down there. It looks like a controller of some kind. Nothing special here. There was, I should have put this in there. There was a very funny part of this movie where these three guys are driving into the Skorsky headquarters. And he's in there because he wants to investigate. Skorsky's not being cooperative. He's the investigator. He's the guy. And he comes flying into the parking garage under the front of the building. The security guy comes over and says, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And he says, "It's okay. We're from International Business Machines." And then they walk into the room, and the security guard's like, "Well, okay, if you're from International Business Machines, you can do whatever you want." So that's why I got the biggest kick out of that. All right, figures. There it is. Man, this little guy sitting off to the side by itself. I just don't get the impression that the data center was done yet, although you're not going to move things around after you cut the holes in the floor. This was a microfiche machine, probably used by a customer engineer. We had a lot of these in different places that I worked, where we could put different things, cards, films, whatever, and take a look at the instruction sheets. So this, to me, it looks like a brand new data center that has not been started up yet, commissioned. And these guys are supposed to go over. This is the expert. These guys don't know doodly squat about computers, but this guy is their data expert that they brought in, and Mr. Skorsky is just going to have to let them run roughshod over the machine. Okay, so here it appears to be a 2501 card reader. These hands are Elke Summer. This is probably the first and last time in Elke Summer's life that she loaded cards into a 2501 card reader, model B1 or B2. Now, the B1 or B2 was specific to the 2501, as I read, that the 3505 is A1 and A2 models. One thing about IBM, they were never going to lose the prominence of their naming scheme. That is for sure. It was so confusing that only their customer engineers and salespeople understood it. But this got my attention here. 00B. Now, you guys tell me if I'm missing something here, but it appears to me that they used stick-on lettering or letraset lettering, which is something that you kind of rubbed on back in the day, and this was the address. Because if you're using Hercules, I can't find anything in there referencing this. I find this in Hercules at 00C, where if you do a dev init and then you have a text file that you want to access, which I have not been very successful at in CMS. I was successful at it a while ago on something else I was playing with Hercules. But anyhow, this is what we see, I believe, on Hercules, but this looks like the address at the time for this particular card reader, which she is then inserting all the cards into. This also is a piece of engineering. One of the things about IBM, boy, they really back in the 60s knew how to build a machine, because plastic was not all that common. Plastic molding and 3D printing and all these things were things of the future, at least in a production sense. 3D printing wasn't even in the they didn't even think about that. But injection molding was relatively new. So everything was made out of aluminum and polished steel, and it was a beautiful, beautiful stuff. All right. So in Madrid, that was becoming the hotbed for IBM, and they have actually established quite a large presence in Spain. So in 2025 now, you have the IBM Think Tour Madrid 2025, where the president of IBM Spain, Portugal, Greece, and Israel was there. So this is not something which doesn't have a historical precedent. Making a movie in Spain, of course, was natural for the director because that's where he was from and he understood the production of it. And I guess it was economical to move everything over there for the majority of it. But having the IBM computer background probably was something which was becoming not popular, but in the public eye. That Spain, Madrid, Barcelona, Madrid mostly, that they wanted to be a hotbed, a center of economic prosperity and business in Europe. And I think they succeeded in that. So it's not without precedent. Okay, so I just want to let you know that this movie really highlighted, at least in some regards, the IBM 360 environment that was going on in Spain right at that point in time. They tried their best to include it in the movie, but it was not something that they explained very technically in any way. One thing that Skorsky had said, the owner of the company, is that encryption was all his, and that is why it was an unhackable system, and only he knew. I don't know what he knew, because the actual schedules were on paper. And it said that you're going to pick up your money here at this time on this day, and you're going to take this route. And there wasn't a whole lot of routes, by the way, between L.A. and Las Vegas, to say the least. So I was kind of dumb to put that in, but it was just a part of the plot. You can, by the way, you can watch this movie. You don't have to rent this movie. This movie is actually available for download or watching online right there at archive.org. I have found that people have uploaded a lot of movies that no one seems to care about to archive. Colossus the Forbin Project is on archive.org as a full multi-gigabyte MP4. You can download it and watch at your leisure. Same thing here. So that's just go on to archive.org and just type in this search term and you'll pull this thing down. I'm not sure you're going to be able to suffer through it. Ernie didn't like it. He thought it was a cheesy movie. Well, don't take his word for it. Watch it for yourself and see what you think. And you can see a little bit of the the IBM 360 highlighted. I won't say highlighted. It was one of the actors. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I thought you get a kick out of that part of my IBM or computers in the movies. It doesn't have to be IBM, but computers in the movies. Another one, we'll do another one soon. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for bearing with me during the summer respite. I have been very busy. It is, if you're watching this, it is in end of August 2025, and the summer is slowly coming to an end. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.